Welcome to the Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast. I am your host, Sarah Smith. I am a practicing rural family physician and the charting coach. This is the podcast for physicians and advanced practice providers who are ready to step back from the busyness of their clinical day to share ideas, question everything, and redesign their clinical day. We are redesigning clinical medicine to create sustainable clinical days and create time for our lives outside of medicine. Join us for discussions with world experts who are helping design sustainable models of clinical medicine and the physicians or clinicians who have discovered or designed sustainable models of clinical medicine for themselves. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. So today I am delighted to bring you Dr. Kerry Wilkins. So I want to introduce you to her, and I'm going to let Kerry introduce herself in her own words in a moment, but who is she to us? So I came across Dr. Wilkins somewhere on Facebook about ADHD in physicians. And she had some interesting things to say. So I brought her in as a guest coach into the Charting Champions program. And that is one of our very dear to our hearts recordings because it helps us understand why we don't enjoy doing inbox and all the other fun, not fun things about our clinical day, and some tips and strategies about how to look after ourselves when we're in that zone of really not wanting to. So welcome, Dr. Wilkins. I will let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So as Sarah has already mentioned, my name is Kerry Wilkins. I'm a double-boarded adult and child and adolescent psychiatrist, and I'm an assistant professor at a local medical school. And I consult to multiple systems, including educational systems and government entities. And I'm delighted to be here today.
Oh, we are so delighted to have you as well. And you do a little coaching for some people as well. Is that?
I do. So I've coached individuals in the past, and currently I mostly consult to individuals in the context of systems through my systems consultation work.
Perfect. I love that. We're going to be interested to hear a little more about that. So tell us about you and your journey in medicine.
Oh, wow. My journey in medicine. When I was young, I used to say that the only thing that I knew for sure that I did not want to do was to be a doctor.
That's a great start.
I was like, I'm not really interested in how the body works, but what I really was interested in is people, how people relate to one another, and also how we relate to the world. Mm-hmm. And so, that journey of discovery and curiosity about how things work and how things integrate is kind of what ended up bringing me to medicine ultimately. I came through it through ethics because I was really interested in medical ethics. Mm-hmm. And a mentor said that the best way to get into medical ethics was to either be a lawyer or to be a doctor. And so I worked in a law office over the summer, and I liked my job fine, but I didn't much care for his. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go to medical school. That's what brought me to medicine as a field. So, what brought me to systems consultation? When I was in medical school, I used to ask all of my preceptors, were they glad that they chose the field that they chose? And, I really got some very interesting answers from a lot of the physicians. And I was really interested and intrigued by surgery. Mm-hmm. I was going from surgery to psychiatry. And I said, well, gosh, I don't know about psychiatry. And so many of the surgeons said, I almost chose psychiatry, but I ended up going into surgery instead.
Wow.
Yes. It was so curious. Why were people that were interested in surgery interested in psychiatry? And I spoke to the psychiatrists when I was on that rotation, and I said, I don't know about psychiatry. It's just, in surgery, you go in, you see the problem, and you fix it. Mm-hmm. And in psychiatry, it's these chronic conditions that, that will be with you that you have to accommodate for the rest of your life. And my preceptors will say, oh, Kerry, I'm going to convert you to psychiatry. And, I was converted. It was just fascinating to really find out, how to, because there still is a problem that you can go in and identify and understand and learn how to either fix or accommodate for or recognize that it was never a problem to begin with.
Mm.
So that's kind of what brought me into the field.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. Was it an easy journey? Did you enjoy the process of becoming a doctor, given it wasn't your first love?
No, I don't think that for anyone that the journey is easy, nor do I think that it should be. Because if it's an easy journey, then I wonder if there's perhaps a disconnection from both your experience and the experience of witnessing the pain of others. I think that that's, a really important milestone to be able to sit with and recognize. And I think that, some people are brought into the field for different reasons. And some people perhaps don't have that connection and they struggle in other areas. And I think that, part of the struggle is also part of embracing and engaging with life.
Yeah, that's a bit profound.
Well, I am a psychiatrist.
This is true. It is true. This is why we bring you in, because you've got a great brain for these sorts of things. That it's supposed to be hard, because I know that, yes, doing new things is hard, right? And the experience of medicine, I think you're right, is not easy. And if it is easy, maybe we need to step back and say, what have I missed?
Well, that part of your life that's clear and concise and makes sense can be easy, and there are other parts of your life that are more challenging. We all have different relative strengths and different relative vulnerabilities. And so where are those, if medicine is so easy that we find all of our time and all of our focus and all of our investment in it, where are those other areas of life where perhaps they are harder, and are we trying to escape or avoid them by funneling all of our attention into medicine? That's interesting too.
Yeah, I think a lot of physicians feel trapped by medicine, that it doesn't end and there are things to do. I was having a similar conversation with one of the physicians recently, just when you're trying to take that break and go away, and life is hard and little kids are hard, and all you want to do is jump back into that inbox.
Absolutely. It's
Which
clear.
you don't actually want to do, but it's the familiar and it feels urgent.
That's so profound. It feels urgent.
Yeah.
And is it as urgent as that feeling is telling us that it is? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is in the situation where there was somebody else covering the inbox, but the whole experience of finally having a vacation was just unfamiliar.
Sometimes it's hard to sit in that discomfort.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So then you are now becoming a psychiatrist.
I did, yes.
How does that process go for you?
It was very interesting. I'm one of those people that likes to explore the possibilities. So when I was going through the interview process, I was trying to decide what kind of path I wanted to take to become a child psychiatrist. And part of that was, did I want to triple board in pediatric psychiatry, child and adolescent psychiatry, or did I want to double board in psychiatry, child psychiatry? And the way I made that decision at the end of the day, the last week before the match list came in, was, what did I want to do? Who did I want to become? And which path would be more likely to give me the skills to really become that individual? So I chose the double board over the triple board. and I have no regrets.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about my particular training is that it was focused on community consultation. And these days I would reframe that and I'd say systems consultation. It had the vision of where an individual was in their broader ecological system, in their family, in their setting, in their community, in their state, and all of this trickles down to influence the individual we are at the bottom or within it.
Yeah. I think that's very fascinating because many of us in medicine would love to see the system change, but we're so busy and overwhelmed with what we're doing already that we don't have that capacity, at least right now, most of us, unless we really, 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 really want to change the system, in which case we find the time to try and advocate in some area. But you kind of came at it from the lens of there's a person and there's a whole system around them, and I want to be part of all of that.
Yeah, and I think that there are different times and different seasons where you're able to focus on different professional and personal priorities. And I like perhaps to push against the concept that we are stuck in the job or stuck in the system that we're in. We're choosing to be in that job or that system at this stage of life. Yes. And things can change at any time. Yes. And it's always valuable for us as individuals to look at what our priorities are and to assess hierarchically what's our most important priority in this moment, in this stage of life, and what am I willing to sacrifice to be able to align my roles and my jobs and my positions and my engagement with my family to meet that hierarchy of personal needs.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable because we can't be 100% everywhere.
No, absolutely not. And no one can. All of us are making choices every minute of every day. And the important thing is that we take ownership of those choices. I'm willing to operate within these restrictions right now because it's meeting other needs and other goals and other priorities that I have. Mm-hmm. And when that system is no longer working for me, I can change it. Mm-hmm. I'm a physician. I've already gone through this whole journey to become a physician, and I have a unique skill set that I can use to apply to meaningful change in the world and to meaningful work and positions.
Yeah, so helpful to remember that we can advocate for change for ourselves if it's not working for us right now. Yes.
And if we don't choose to be our own advocate, then who will? We know our needs better than anyone else. Mm-hmm. And the system has to look after the system's needs.
Yes.
And we can recognize that and accept that. And we can look after our own personal and professional needs and advocate for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I say frequently, no one else will respect your time. That's your job. That's your job. No one else will respect your time. They will steal all of it if you don't put some boundaries in there for yourself, for sure. Yeah, I love it. So I want to get to your interest in ADHD. Where did that come from? And what have you learned as you've gone and progressed through that journey?
Wow, I find ADHD fascinating. It's certainly bread and butter of child and adolescent psychiatry.
Yes.
But perhaps more importantly, I've always been interested in optimization and executive functioning and staying attentive to the flow of time. And also, I've always been curious, what gets in the way of things like starting a task, initiating, how does one effectively organize to task to make our time meaningful and valuable to accomplish what we hope or want to accomplish? And I think it's safe to say that in childhood, that was certainly a relative vulnerability for me, because I saw so many fun things, so many shiny objects, so many interesting ideas that I wanted to explore all of them. And sometimes in exploring all of them, you never really got to completion of any of them.
Yes.
And so, developing systems to really be honest with myself and what my priorities were, and then using that system and applying it meaningfully and consistently over time was an important personal and professional goal for me.
Yeah.
And certainly ADHD is, while misnamed, is fundamentally a condition of relative lags in executive functioning.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us more. So I loved learning about executive functioning from you. So give us the ideas on what does that mean? What is executive functioning? And because not all of us are doing psych, and not all of us are in family med and kind of may have picked up some of these things. Tell us the what is executive functioning?
Executive functioning is the frontal lobe skills. Yeah. So it's all the higher order skills that we use to make sense of the information that we take in and to apply it meaningfully. Yeah. So anything. So the executive functioning skills are quite broad. Initiation, starting tasks, organizing to a task, engaging in motor planning, so complex motor planning, inhibiting stimuli that are coming in. So that can be shiny ideas, so internal distractibility. It can also be external distractions. Distractibility of being able to inhibit sensory input. There's a number of other executive functioning skills as well, but the easiest way that I find to think about executive functioning, or for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which attention is somewhat of a downstream effect. What I might say attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is instead challenges with inhibition. Yeah. Inhibiting sensory input, inhibiting distraction from internal ideas, keeping attention funneled so that we can wire all the way down to that higher order executive functioning where we're meaningfully processing and synthesizing ideas and following that idea to conclusion.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. This makes a lot of sense because a lot of us are distractible from the tasks that we want to do. So we may have decided that it's time for doing inbox items, and you know that the highest priority ones might be X or Y, but you go and find yourself down the hallway talking to staff members or jumping in the next room, talking to the next human, because that's way more fun.
Absolutely. And, I think that that's important, is that, we can talk about how ADHD is a condition involving relative lags in executive functioning, but that's just a label. All of us are, have times where we have a greater capacity to access our executive functioning, and times where it's harder to access our executive functioning because of relative vulnerabilities. And that where we are in terms of being at our baseline level of emotion regulation throughout the day varies based on various factors. And because the frontal lobe, where we access our executive functioning, was wired last and it's most complex, it's the thing we lose access to first when we are tired, when we are hungry, when we are overwhelmed, when we have a lot of things that we're holding in our working memory that we're trying to be able to remember throughout the day. And so all of those things are just factors that are pushing down our capacity to be able to access our optimal level of executive functioning, whatever that optimal level might be for the individual.
That is so important. So that is all the humans and all the physicians and clinicians going through our day. And as we pile more and more things into our working memory, that's the things from today that we've been doing and keeping in our head. The more that's in there, the more decisions we're making, the more things we're holding in there to dump into that chart later, the less helpful brain we have left.
Yes. Yes. We can't access our higher order functioning when we are holding too much and carrying it and not allowing ourselves to let those things go. To not allow ourselves to shift set, which is also, by the way, an executive functioning skill, to shift set to let somebody else hold that information for the time being, or to take a moment to jot it down so I don't have to keep holding that number in my head. We only have a finite ability to access our executive functioning. So how are we choosing to use that finite capacity? And is there ways that we can make it easier? Yes, there are, absolutely. So find out what they are, use them, and optimize those systems.
Yeah. So some people find, I think a lot of the humans would find that they're sharper or faster when their brain is fresh. Like you say, we haven't filled it up for the day. But then I'll have other physicians saying that really the time they can go and get the bulk of that work done is nighttime. Tell us about that. Is that there's different humans, or is this the way they've trained their brain? Is this trainable? What do you think?
Yes.
All of the above.
All of that is true, and certainly some people have different circadian rhythms, different flows of their optimal peak time. Some people have a hard time. They find that they're more available at the end of the day when they have nothing else that they have to hold in working memory to think of what they have to accomplish. This is the only thing left in their day, and they can delve in without distraction. Right? So some people are of that mindset.
Yeah.
And some people are able to use that time right after they wake up, at the beginning of the day, when they have their great energy stores and have eaten a protein-filled breakfast, to really dive in. It's different people have different flows, and there are also optimal times when bodies operate if we were to train ourselves into a new system of relating to the world.
Okay, so it's a little bit trainable. And there's some types of rhythm things available here. I like that. I actually noticed finally the kids are in bed. Finally, the day is done. Now I have undistracted time to do these things. I totally understand that. Like, that makes sense, even though your brain is tired and probably overwhelmed and probably, still a little bit underhydrated. But that pattern of I'll do that later, and then they eventually get to that later, but it's then costing, because then we're staying up later, so we're having less effective rest, so we're waking up tired the next day. So it's kind of this compounding learned pattern of behavior.
Yes, it's a perpetuating cycle, right? Of always being just a little behind the eight ball, just being a little less capable than what we could be at our optimal level of rest and our optimal level of nutrition and hydration and all of those factors.
Yeah.
It works for some people, and there is also a cost, and we have to label, recognize, and accept that cost
Mm-hmm.
or label, recognize, and choose to create a new system.
Yeah. So coming back to those systems. So it's that noticing what you're doing already and then deciding what would be better, easier, faster, more in time for my brain. Yeah. So a lot of learned skills. Do you find that maybe many physicians, clinicians have this executive functioning struggle?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There are advantages and disadvantages to having a brain that is very curious and everything going on around them at all times. And also, medicine as a field has a very high baseline executive functioning burden. So combine both of those things, and most physicians have some degree of needing to balance and accommodate for executive functioning, even if that's not necessarily a clinical deficit. It's a feature of their career that they've chosen.
Yeah, I think that's very important, that it's a commonality because of many factors about the profession that we're in. It requires a lot of thinking, and clinical reasoning, medical decision-making takes a huge amount of our brain because we're taking in all this information and running it through the illness script and then figuring out, what are we going to do with this puzzle? I love the puzzle, but that's my brain, right? I recognize that I love the detective work. Like, give me a really meaty challenge that will help my brain feel excited. But then I want to spend an hour just diving into that. I don't want to have to go and see the next patient or deal with the inbox. I'd much rather learn about this person.
Really fascinating, right? And it's also dopaminergic because it's so interesting, which gives a little bit of a shoot of dopamine that even helps us funnel our attention even more.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not the time to necessarily dive into that puzzle at this particular moment because we have higher things on our priority list that have to be accomplished first.
Yeah. So what about those physicians who are really struggling because of potentially this distractibility, or because it's just so hard to initiate that task of doing the things that are not their favorite parts? So they are trapped in that room, their time awareness gone because they're so excited by this person in front of them, like their brain is interested, dopamine hits all around, and it turns up as running behind, not getting that chart note done. That chart note then takes 2-3 times as long tonight because they're so bored by it. What then? What are some of the ideas that could be helpful for that physician and clinician?
Oh, there are so many ideas.
Yeah.
And I think that's, first you have to label and recognize that it's a problem for you. And, most people that perhaps are engaging with you, for example, have already recognized that it's a problem and it's something that they want to change because they want their life to feel different in some form or fashion. And so if you have labeled that problem, and you have labeled that the feature that's interfering with your capacity to function in a meaningful way, or a way that you find meaningful, is that you're spending too much time in a patient's room, that you're losing track of time. Well, you've now labeled a concrete objective that you can target. Okay, so it's time. I'm spending too much time in the patient's room. What is driving that? We can develop a list of hypotheses of what's driving that. One hypothesis might be that we're really interested and engaged in the puzzle of the patient in front of us. One hypothesis might be that we're getting distracted by different shiny chief complaints. And we lose track of the original one that brought the patient in. One might be that it's an awareness of passage of time issue.
Yeah.
So you now have 3 hypotheses that you can develop accommodations for and then test.
Mm.
Let's go with awareness of passage of time.
Yeah.
You can look at your environment. Is your environment set up in a way that allows you to be mindful of time passing? So you can look in your room and in your space. You have clocks easily available and accessible that you look at naturally.
Mm-hmm.
That's an easy way to be able to be mindful of the flow of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's outside of my control. The clinic has guidelines and where the clocks are. I can't do that. Okay. What you can do is you can develop reminders for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be, wrist alarms that vibrate that you set before you go into each room to give you an awareness of a few minutes beforehand you need to be wrapping up the appointment. That can be bringing in a binder board with a clock that you keep clipped on the top.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a lot of different systems that you use. The system itself doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The tool that you use doesn't matter. We can keep coming up with tons and tons of tools.
Yeah.
It's labeling the problem and labeling the objective of what that is trying to solve that is more important and more personally meaningful.
Yeah. I love that. So this is coming back to that systems awareness. So you're like, what is not going right? And then what it needs to, where do I need to focus at? What is the system I'm trying to change? And that is my awareness of time passage in the room. There's lots of tools I can use to help me with this goal, but my goal is to be more time aware in the room, knowing that I don't have good time awareness.
Exactly.
I love that. Perfect.
What is the goal of the intervention?
Yes.
That's the thing that I come back to again and again and again. What is the goal of the intervention in this moment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I can try tons of different tools. I can continue to brainstorm tools because that's really fun and exciting, right?
Down a rabbit hole of timekeepers.
Also, the thing is, particularly with executive functioning, is that one of the things that makes it easier to access our executive functioning is a sense of novelty. So, okay, a tool works for a little bit and it stops working because we become habituated to it and it no longer gives us the cue.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes.
Because then we've already labeled the goal.
Yeah.
So we just need to change the tool. And there's tons of tools. We rotate the tools to maintain novelty, to also maintain our awareness to the goal.
I love that. Maintain novelty, everybody. It's so good because our brain likes new, exciting, fun things potentially. So I'm always fascinated by humans that can eat the same food every day. The studies will tell us those people, have their body weight will stay the same for years and years. And if we could model that, everybody would be, potentially ideal size, for instance. And I'm like, how does a human just want to eat the same thing every day? Like, that's just so boring.
They get their dopaminergic input in other ways.
Other ways. That's right. This is so fascinating. Like, the human is so fascinating when we give it a chance to learn, right? When we're learning about ourselves. All right. So optimization. How do we optimize then our brains? So you've talked about some of the executive functioning pieces and now the optimization of, so we've got identification of what's going wrong, what we might need to change about our system, and how do we now help our brains?
How can we decrease the executive functioning load of our days?
Right. Yes. Such a good question. We should keep asking ourselves this question. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have a good awareness of what the executive functioning skills are, one of which is self-monitoring, by the way. So, Are we remembering to eat? Are we remembering to use the bathroom? Are we remembering to stop and close our eyes and take a space and just breathe for a minute without having something in our mind? You know, all of these are skills that optimize our capacity to access our higher order skills.
Yes.
You're always working to decrease your executive functioning load.
Right.
So how do we do that? Lots of cues. Cues are valuable for our day. So, you know, some people use cues of built-in schedules, which works very well for some people. We have blocks of time, and at the end of that block, we do things like assess, you know, a cue to self-monitor. Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Do I need to take this break to go to the restroom? How am I feeling right now? You know, it's okay to give ourselves permission to ask those questions. And in fact, it's really important, because by asking ourselves those questions, we optimize our capacity to be our best selves and our most efficient, and also our highest order clinical mind selves. We are doing our patients a service to take those 5-minute breaks.
Love it. Okay, that's very important, you guys. So we've just touched on the human physiology pieces: water, food, a little break, something that de-escalates our cortisol or stress levels. That could be closing our eyes and taking some deep breaths, or other grounding type activities that we've talked about before with some of our other guests on the show. Super helpful, because what it's doing is calming down your human physiology so that you actually improve your executive functioning
and make yourself faster, more efficient, and able to access the material you're trying to reach in your brain faster. You are saving yourself a considerable amount of time to take a 1-minute break.
Yeah, I love this. Thank you. Permission to look after yourself too. It doesn't help just you, it helps your team and your patients.
Yes.
Beautiful. Very, very important. Because often when we're in that, I'm so busy, I'm so rushed, I'm so far behind, or there's so many more people to see, whatever that sounds like in your head, and you're like, and cue, it's lunchtime, or and cue, it's time for a break, or and cue, my bladder's full, I need to go fix that. And there is time for that, because that gives me more of my brain for later.
Absolutely. And being able to monitor the thoughts in your head. What are those red flag thoughts that tell you that you're tired and you need a break? I can't do this. This is overwhelming. The administration doesn't care about me. No realistic person could do all of this. Wait a minute. I do this every day. That's a red flag thought. I'm tired. My brain is overwhelmed right now. I'm overstimulated. I need to ground. I need a break.
Yes. So helpful. Okay, now, when I was in Queensland, they came out with an anti-fatigue policy. They got rid of restrooms, as in sleeping rooms for the doctors. They wouldn't need those anymore because we have an anti-fatigue policy. And the number one item on there was caffeine. They encouraged caffeine that would replace the need for a doctor's sleeping room. And I was horrified and amused by that document that came out. In fact, I have it somewhere in my emails because I had to have a screenshot of that. I'm like, what?
We're going to replace
we don't need sleep. We need caffeine. All right. So tell us about caffeine, stimulants. What are they doing for brains?
Caffeine is a tricky one because caffeine will give you an immediate boost. But depending on the time of day, there are going to be downstream risks. And also giving you an immediate attention boost to funnel your attention depending on your physiology, may also give you a heightened sense of alertness, which might also enhance your sensitivity to threat, bias, and perception. Which will make you edgier, which might also make you a little bit less optimal in other ways. So some ways it's enhancing your capacity, and some ways it's lowering it. So being mindful of time of day with your caffeine intake is really important.
So if you're agitated, for instance, it can be really hard to sit and do the boring work of results, messages, that type of thing, because now you're in that space of, oh, this is frustrating me, or why do they have to ask this question? Or I don't want to, I don't want to answer that, or
It can be. And I think to use caffeine optimally, I think that the value is looking at your level of arousal. So, and I think that that's really, really cool because, during the day you trend towards hypo or hyper arousal. And caffeine is helpful when you're fatigued, hypo aroused, and you need just a little bit of a boost to get you to a more optimal functional level. Where it's not so good is when you're already edgy and you get a little bit more, and that's bumping your arousal even higher than it was before. And so, you can funnel your attention better, but you're edgier, and it's not helping you be optimal. And if you're drinking too much caffeine too late in the day, of course, it's going to interfere with your sleep. And so your sleep quality is going to be impaired, which is going to create and contribute to that perpetual cycle of overfatigue. So it's one of the things that you have to weigh the pros and cons. What are you trying to accomplish with that tool? What is the goal of the intervention? And is it helping you most optimally meet that goal?
Love it. Back to systems, people. We see why you're an expert here.
It goes back to what you're trying to accomplish. Some people are using that coffee as more of a sensory break. They haven't really labeled it as such. But that's really the benefit that they're getting from it. Could you replace that benefit with something that does not have the caffeine or has a lower dose of caffeine and still get the benefits that are the most effective from that intervention at that time?
Oh, I love that. I used to tell patients who were smokers who go outside and breathe in and out deeply for 5 minutes that is what is actually helping them feel better, not the cigarette. So if you can still take your water, go outside, breathe in and out deeply for 5 minutes, just don't have the cigarette, you're going to get the mental load break without the thing that you don't want to have in your life anymore.
Exactly. Can you get the benefits and mitigate the downsides?
Yes. So helpful. Okay. Stimulants. Tell me about them. What are they doing?
Stimulants are working in a very similar way to how caffeine is working. For some individuals, it's perhaps a more sustainable way to get to that bump, to funnel your attention. It helps give you just a little bit of space, right, to be able to stop and think. And some people just don't have that threshold. They have challenges inhibiting emotional input, for example, so they can't modulate their emotions. And so that gives the sensation, it slows the sensation a little bit of the emotional experience, which gives them the space to be able to stop and think a little bit more effectively.
Okay. All right. So it's kind of pausing some of the input or challenges with emotional regulation so that they can choose what they would like to do and kind of focus more on those task if that's the idea of this medication for them.
You know, it's clinically in practice how it's functioning, as opposed to the mechanism of how it's functioning, which, you know, is complex. But clinically, what do we see clinically? That's kind of one of the ways that it's helping. It's helping you to you know, to slowing things down just a little bit, so you can process a little bit more effectively, so you're not overwhelmed.
Yeah, got it.
Where's the sense of overwhelm of it?
Yeah. It's just helpful to understand kind of why decisions are made about stimulants or not, and then what are the kind of things we're watching for if people are taking stimulants to say that they are helping them or not helping them. I think there's still a decent split about, you know, should this be a thing and all that sort of thing. And I think, okay, I like your definition that we're watching the individual as we're using them to say, is this helping solve for things that are going not so well for this individual?
If it's making you edgier, you might reconsider if it's really meeting your higher order goal.
Mm-hmm.
If it's feeling a little calmer after you take it, a stimulant is helping you feel calmer and more focused. Maybe it's helping your particular brain operate a little bit more effectively.
Got it. Love it. Okay, so let's take systems a little broader. So we've already mentioned that we have inherently a higher executive load because of the type of work we're doing, because of the expectations within our day, the types of tasks that we're doing. And now we can start to see that if we offload some of these tasks to our teams, to others, then we're doing less of it ourselves. So we're helping our own brain in its world. Would that be a fair comment?
That you're helping your brain by offloading?
Yeah, so we can help you if we can offload some of the tasks.
Absolutely. And you have to you don't have to hold everything. Your time is very valuable, and what you're offering to the people that you're serving requires a high degree of executive functioning and baseline. Mm-hmm. It is doing your patients a service to use your natural supports. And not everything has to be done 105%. Good enough, even if it's not stacked exactly the way that you would stack it, or organized exactly the way you organize it, or written with the exact same wording that you perhaps would use, doesn't necessarily matter in the grander scheme of things, and you have to accept good enough. You can accept good enough in some things that are lower on your priorities, so that you can really optimize those things that are higher. Yes,
I love that. So I love permission to be good enough. It's always key here. Because at the cost, right? So if you were to do it to 105%, that's going to cost you. If you keep the task, that's right. If you keep the task because you want it done your way, it's costing you.
Mm-hmm. And it's maybe costing you in things that are actually more important to you when you really stop and think about it.
Yeah.
Such as perhaps patient care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thinking about systems, the work you're doing, is there anything about the work you're doing that would be helpful for us to learn about?
Oh, in systems-based practice?
Yeah.
I'm really, I really enjoy it because I like to optimize how systems work with one another to meet broader goals of the individuals they're serving. and also of what they're trying to accomplish in that intervention. And
Hmm.
so I think it's really fun. I think it's fun to bridge across systems, also to be able to really work and advocate in the best interest of individuals either within that system or individuals that they're serving.
Yeah. Do you have an example of something that could help demonstrate that for us?
Okay. So one of my consultation roles is educational systems consultation. So I like to help educational systems look broadly at their goals of what they want to accomplish as a district, for example, so an educational district, particularly targeting towards educating all learners,
Yeah.
also helping all learners be more capable and better able to access both education and produce proof of that knowledge
Hmm.
meaningfully. And all of that is executive functioning, and all of that is related to helping people be most regulated to be able to be most optimal in their best selves. And so I like to look at systems initiatives and being able to meet what those systems goals are from top down.
Hmm.
And I also like to look bottom up. I like to look at the individuals that they're serving and how they're able to access the services that help them be most effective. And sometimes one system in isolation is a silo, and there's another system that is also serving that child or that individual or that adult,
Hmm.
and those systems don't talk to each other. And so both systems are trying to reinvent wheels, or they don't have all of the information that they need to be able to make decisions meaningfully. And so I like to also look at systems of communication across those silos to be able to optimize service delivery.
Yeah. I like that work because we see that siloed work lists, for instance, just taking it back to medicine. When you have a siloed work list, it's really easy to forget about it.
Mhm.
Right, when there's an area that you're supposed to go and look at, but it doesn't integrate with the thing you're looking at all the time, it's a place where things can go wrong, where patients can fall through gaps. And you're like, why won't these talk to each other? Why do I have to have this one over here, that one over there? And I don't have to do all this extra work and then trying to figure out how do we get them talking to each other. Yeah.
And if you don't look at the global system that's serving, an individual or a cohort, then you don't identify the gaps. It's
Mm,
hard to identify where those holes are. And for some individuals, good enough is fine. They do fine. They go through, and then there's no problem. And then for um, more vulnerable cohorts, those are the ones that aren't really getting what they are trying to get out of the service that's being provided to them. And so, kind of looking at what those goals are and identifying those core cohorts and developing systems that hold those individuals and help them be most successful in that engagement, I think is one of the goals of my work.
yeah. Yeah. So when you're looking at your school system, you're not wanting good enough for the students who are doing well. You're looking at the vulnerable people saying, is what we're doing helping the ones that actually are needing the most help anyway, because they don't have that ability to go and advocate on their own anyway.
Absolutely. Is everyone being raised? Is the system helping raise cohorts to be their most effective selves?
Yeah. So if physicians and clinicians are finding themselves in that space where they are feeling like they are not helping themselves in their day, that their level of executive functioning is overwhelming, if they've not really optimized much about their day, what would you recommend is a place to start? Where do you kind of direct people to go to start the process of figuring themselves out?
Oh, there are so many places, and I might say, what are you trying to accomplish? What's the goal that you're targeting?
Yeah.
Really, first and foremost, I think taking the space and taking that breath to really be genuinely honest with yourself about what you prioritize and looking to see if your life is reflecting those priorities.
Mm.
And our life is more than just our profession.
Mm.
So more globally, not just for our career trajectory, more globally, who we want to be, what kind of person we want to be, and what we want in our life outside of our profession, as well as inside it.
Yeah.
And being able to globally rank what your priorities are in this stage of life.
Yeah.
So that at the end of the day, when we look back and we wonder, did I take advantage of that moment that I was in? Do I regret what I missed? You can say no, because I made the best decision I could in the moment I was in with the information that I had at the time, and I embrace it. But you have to ask yourself those questions first, so that later when you look back on it, you're able to say, I did ask my question. I did look at my life, and I did have those priorities in that moment. And life has changed, and it's okay to have different priorities. I can let my past self go. I can let those past priorities pass by and reassess what my priorities are now.
Yeah. So helpful. I really love that. Where would people go to learn more about optimization, executive functioning, improving or looking after themselves or their brain? Where do you recommend people kind of go for more information?
Certainly, because I have learned the Dr. brain, I kind of like to look at what, label what the executive functioning skills are. So there's certainly a lot of resources in executive functioning, and also a lot of resources on ADHD that you can apply to decrease your executive functioning burden at baseline. So that's a rabbit hole you could go into. You could certainly follow me if that's of interest to you. I'm at Kerry Wilkins MD on Twitter, and I guess now on Threads. There's certainly lots of wonderful and valuable resources out there, and I hope that all of your listeners look forward to exploring more if it's something that's of interest.
I love that. And anything we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about or say before we close up today?
I think that one of the most important things that I would pass on to your listeners is that they don't have to accept the cultural norms in their field or in their job or in their position. They have agency in building the life that they want to build. And I think that it's a failing that our field tells us that we are training to a job. We're actually developing a unique skill set that we can apply in a lot of different ways. And all of those ways that we choose to apply our skill set, both in our personal and our professional lives, have the potential to be meaningful and fulfilling to us as individuals. We don't have to accept those cultural norms. If we identify that something is not working for us, we can label it and we can change it.
Yeah. I love that. That is so helpful, because we are all here because we're looking for sustainable clinical medicine. I think that we have really gone into some areas that will be helpful to people practically and system level. So thank you so much, Kerry, for being here with us today. And I wish you all a wonderful week.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
And just a reminder that the information we discuss here on this podcast is considered educational content and not medical advice. So if any of the information that you heard today, and you're curious about whether you need help in this area, please always consult with your medical people rather than taking educational content. Thank you. Have a great week. Thank you for being part of the Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast. If you'd like to learn more or join us to help you get home with today's work done, go to chartingcoach.ca. There you'll find all the information on the premier Lifetime Access Charting Champions program that is helping physicians get home with today's work done, with all the proven tools, support, and community you need to create time for your life outside of medicine. We would love to see you there. Until next time, thanks for listening.